Massive day of action as protesters gathered in dozens of cities across the country to rally against the White House's zero-tolerance immigration policy. Demonstrators speaking out against the separation and detention of immigrant families at the border.
Yeah, and these were big. Demonstrators, including some actors and singers, some big names, all calling for the immediate return of children to their parents.
This is all of our fight. Because if it can happen to any child, it can happen to my child and your child and all of our children.
Yeah, that was Alicia Keys there in L.A. But again, these protests all over the country today. And President Trump did sign an executive order last week reversing his administration's policy of separating families. But still, more than 2,000 kids are waiting to be reunited with their parents. Now, some lawmakers are calling on the government to abolish ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement.
It's time to put an end to this cruel and incompetent policy. Look at ICE. What a group of incompetents. At this point, they're focused more on toddlers than terrorists.
Now, President Trump did come to ICE's defense this morning. He tweeted out his support, saying, quote, "The great and brave men and women of ICE," writing that they are doing a fantastic job. Well, here in Sacramento, thousands gathered at the John Moss Federal Building in downtown for their own Families Belong Together rally.
Most of the people who showed up, they shared the same view, but Fox 40's Doug Johnson explains why some speakers weren't actually able to get their message out.
I need to make my voice heard about the horrible things that are happening in our country.
Marie Bryan was one of the estimated 4,000 people in downtown Sacramento who came out to voice their outrage that the Trump administration has allowed the separation of undocumented immigrant families.
They have been separated, they have not been reunited, and I don't trust him to keep that, no prosecution, no separating of families in place. Can't trust the man.
I can't stand it any longer.
For German national Harold Hoven, the leaked images of young children living in cages seems too familiar to the atrocities of the Holocaust.
If you are a German, you know the history well, you know how everything got twisted. And I know what it is to incarcerate people in concentration camps.
No ban, no wall!
While the overall feeling of the crowd seemed to be unified in their message, some speakers were not welcomed with open arms. Cantor Julie Steinberg, the wife of Sacramento Mayor Darrell Steinberg, was interrupted several times during her speech as members of the crowd chanted "Stephon Clark" and "The police, they're killing us." The mayor, standing next to her, at one point stepped away. Julie Steinberg also eventually gave up on her speech.
Mayor Steinberg has been complicit in a lot of the injustices that we've seen throughout the city of Sacramento.
Amir Sale with the Answer Coalition was not listed as an official rally speaker, but ended up attacking the mayor on the mic anyway.
We want to support police brutality. Why the hell would we have Darrell Steinberg up here?
Later, Sale and others led about half the crowd away from the federal building up 7th Street to the county jail.
Bring attention to the fact that there's ICE detainees in the jail.
Meanwhile, Bryan and others felt the mayor's wife, whose synagogue declared itself a sanctuary for refugees and undocumented immigrants, should have been given the opportunity to speak.
We all have to unite to fight this issue.
In Sacramento, Doug Johnson.
We need to hear from everybody.
Fox 40 News.
And event organizers told Fox 40 the march to the jail was not originally planned, and it did split that crowd out there into two. But a spokesperson for the rally says some people just wanted to move around instead of standing in one place in the heat.
We're going to stick with politics here.